Howdy, everybody, and welcome. We're having a conversation this morning with Devin Reeves of the Israeli consulate. Devin, how you doing?
Doing perfect. What about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks very much. It's Thanksgiving week, so this time Thursday, it's all good, and I'm tasting food in the kitchen. But what we're doing today is we're excited to have this conversation with you. And the reason we're excited is we established a really positive relationship with the Israeli Trade Association, the consulate in Houston. Devin is that representative. With MIC, he's introduced us to several companies from Startup Central Nation and other organizations within Israel. And I thought it'd be a great idea to meet the person that we're working with, to learn a little bit more about him, who his customers are, and some of the things that excite him about his job. So first of all, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for those of you following live, there's always an opportunity to ask Devin questions directly. Just log on to our chat, and we will process those questions as we receive them. But for now, Devin, tell us, how did you wind up at the Israeli consulate? What were you doing before, and what are you doing now?
It's actually really interesting. So I come from a PR and psychology background. I was doing medical IT and business development. So I was looking for a way that I could best hone my skills in the relationship building sector, and also with life science and biotechnology. I was always in the medical field doing IT and business development, always talking to new clients. So this was the best shift of using my skill sets in order to best be kind of like the bridge of the gap between Israel and the US. So I came here, I've been here roughly going on 9 months, and it has been an absolute pleasure being here and seeing all the wonderful technology that Israel has to offer, and being able to be the person that is kind of I would say, the liaison that brings the new technology from Israel to the US companies and entities, that kind of fills in the gaps and the needs that they had that they didn't even know existed.
Right. I think our relationship started as you were coming on board there. So it's been fun working with you since you've been there, I suppose. So that's wonderful. Yeah. And I don't think people really recognize some of the quality of companies that come out of Israel. I was shocked to understand that Waze was an Israeli technology that has been acquired, and it has a very esteemed position on my phone.
It's amazing because Israelis, okay, so they are surrounded by enemies. They have very few resources. So therefore, they had to be, the innovators, the cutting edge people, to create the solutions to the problems that they had with the minimal, resources to do it. So the Israelis have provided some wonderful technology that runs the world, that most people have no clue that it's Israeli tech, but they are innovators. And like I said, it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to see all the new technology that's out there that has a potential to help millions of people around the world.
So I know I mentioned Startup Central Nation earlier. Would they be considered your customer, or who are you representing? I know there are companies, but are there other buckets of technologies, innovations that you have access to, or is it primarily through that accelerator?
Okay, so Startup Nation Central are just one of the partners that we work with in order to get new companies. So we are the energy and economic mission of the US. So we are the international business development arm of the Ministry of Economy in Israel. So there are 45 offices worldwide. There are 4 in the US. So we have San Francisco, we have Houston, we have Washington, D.C., and we have New York. So we cover the Midwest to the Southwest of the US. And ultimately, our goal is success stories. So what we try to do is we try to get a Israeli company in contact with a US entity, and then we're kind of like a matchmaker, and we follow up and make sure that the relationships are good, the technology is able to go over, and everything just pretty much goes smoothly. So we are a bridge between the Israeli and the US economies in order to help them to work together.
Got it. So the obvious next question is, the unmet need is, it makes it easier for these companies to go through you and your connections than for them to try to do it independently.
Yes, so they usually traditionally go through the Israeli Export Institute. So the Israeli startups come to the Export Institute or Startup Nation Central, and they say, hey, we have this wonderful technology. We're interested in getting into the US. So we want to get into the US market for, let's just say, Texas or Colorado or Arkansas. So they reach out to the Israeli Export Institute, they fill out a form, and then they come to us and say, hey, this is what we have. Can you help us in order to get into the US market? So like I said, we have 10 offices, or we have 10 states underneath us, which we take care of. And therefore, we provide assistance to get them into the markets to those 10 states. And then the other offices that are here in the US take care of their shares as well. Right. So we are just the branch, like I said, between the Midwest and the Southwest of the US.
Right. So how do you measure success? The number of companies that are here, the number of shots on goal, jobs created, what does that look like in terms of success for you? How does that work?
So our KPIs are when an Israeli company and a US company make a deal together, or a pilot, or we find funding for a joint project. So when we're able to get the technology from Israel and get it into the US hands in the US market, so the different US companies, the entities, whenever there's a mesh together, that's how we measure our success.
Right. And I know early on we had discussions about the Bird Foundation, which was really exciting.
Yeah.
And we've had a chance to communicate to US companies, especially those here in North Texas, about the Bird Foundation. And briefly, the Bird Foundation is a collaboration between, and stop me if I start veering off track here, but there's an Israeli company and a US company that agreed to collaborate.
That is correct.
They pursue funding at the same time on each side. So Israeli company goes through the Bird Foundation.
Correct.
The US company goes through NIST, which is part of the Bird Foundation grant.
Correct.
And if both companies are approved, they can collaborate using the funds developed from that funding.
That is correct. So it's all about creating joint pilots programs, and right. Also, just as long as the US company and the Israeli company will agree to some sort of pilot or working together, they'll provide up to $1 million for these joint projects.
Cool. And again, a lot of this is very helpful for companies, especially going through the valley of death. Correct. So while you may have a product, you may have a customer identified, and you may even have an unmet need, depending on the industry that you're pursuing. Mm-hmm. This kind of funding can be substantially helpful in getting to that next milestone. Plus, you're magnifying your market. So it's not just in US or just in Israel, but you've combined it in two separate countries. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's really kind of, a lot of the time, a lot of the obstacles that come, one of the biggest obstacles that come from, putting the Israeli and US company together is finding the funds to get the project going.
That's
So the
correct.
Bird Foundation is the one that kind of pushes everything over to the next level in
Right.
order to really establish, like I said, that bridge between Israel and US and get them together in order to better bring our economies and our countries together.
Agreed. Agreed. So Houston is really well known for the medical apparatus that's down there. It's a monster. Dallas is in its own right.
Yeah,
North Texas is doing our own thing, but so I'm guessing a lot of the concentration of companies in the HIT life sciences space lines up in Houston.
that's
Is that
correct.
fair?
Yes,
Yeah.
so I traditionally work with life science and biotechnology, artificial intelligence. The Houston Medical Center is one of the biggest and brightest in the world. We are literally world renowned.
Sure.
So,
No
yeah,
doubt.
a lot of, well, a majority of the companies that are in the life science sector come to Houston and say, hey, we're knocking at your door. We know that you have, all the facilities. We have the technology, and we can provide the U.S. entities because they are so cutting edge and
Mhm.
so robust. We
Right.
provide them with the technologies, to keep them at the forefront of the medical world,
Right.
constantly.
Sure, sure. That's good. And many of these companies bring over just leadership,
Mm.
either from an execution perspective or technology perspective, and then they build a team locally. Is that pretty much the model that many of them use?
Now, that is the model that some of them use. Some of them do have teams that they are already established, and they will
Okay,
bring them all over. But
sure.
that's another reason why we love working with you, because you can provide them access to work facilities, local workers, provide that kind of that bridge that, because it's not a cheap process,
No.
to move all the way across the world. So, to be able to provide that leadership and that guidance, that's the biggest reason why I came to you and why we worked together for so long.
And we enjoy that relationship substantially. One thing we've learned, well, the three things we've learned that the companies need most from us. They need partnerships
Yeah.
with industry partners, hospitals, universities to assist in perfecting the product.
Mhm.
They do need workforce when they get here. So with universities and a lot of the professionals that are underemployed or looking for a better opportunity, this is an
Mhm.
excellent opportunity. And of course, they're always looking for space.
Correct.
That one has been a little difficult in the middle of COVID, but we are kind of filling the gap with our virtual model so that we can kind of expose and make sure they knew what they're doing, especially through this platform that we're playing with now. So we're excited to work with them, and it's been a lot of fun. But we look forward to the next steps when things get back to some form of normalcy.
And when that happens, don't know.
Yeah,
Hopefully, in the foreseeable future, very
yeah,
soon. But
yeah,
really understandable. Going virtual has definitely been kind of the new norm.
yeah.
But it's so glad to hear that you have, kind of perfected, a platform that you can
Yeah.
use in
Yeah.
order to make the most of the current situation.
We do what we got to do. So the gap, as I kind of expressed, would be those three things: space, facilities, workforce. Any other gaps these companies may be looking for that I may not have mentioned or that comes up in conversations that you have with them?
Yes. One of the biggest gaps is learning US nuances
Ah,
and how, oh my goodness, there is a major gap in how US individuals carry themselves and personality wise, and how I would say how you would do business in the US and how you would do business in Israel are completely different. How you speak to someone in the US versus Israel is completely different. So being able to learn like I said, the subtle nuances of doing business in the U.S. Is something that Israelis really have to work on, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them do. But
Mm-hmm.
they also need those U.S. partners to guide
Mm-hmm.
them and say, "Hey, you don't go about it this way. We go about it this way."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being able to learn, and like I said, I've been here and I've learned, so much about the Israeli culture, and it is a very great thing. They are very direct. They're very straightforward.
That
Uh,
I've learned. I've learned.
they just get to the point. Where in the U.S., it's more of, hey, I'm gonna wine and dine you, before we get to the point.
Yeah.
So it is that gap, but it is definitely closing as we work with these companies and as partners like yourself, kind of be that bridge in between to kind of buffer these situations out.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, it's my first couple of phone calls were an education for me because normally there's a discussion of here's what we do, here's how we
Yeah.
do it, here's why people like it, and it's like that's nice, but what can you do for me now? What can we do? It's like, well, all right, let's just skip to the end of the deck and let's have that. So now that I'm prepared, that deck that used to be 10 slides, 3 slides, so let's just keep this short and snappy. But it's all good. And it's helped me in other presentations. Let's add the little accoutrement, but let's get to the point.
Yeah, it's give me the baby. I don't want the labor pains. So pretty much it.
Agreed. So what do you do for fun?
Actually,
you got a lot of stuff going. You got time zones that are dancing in your head. So
I can tell you what time it is in Israel, Beijing, Sydney.
Right.
But for fun, honestly, I love hanging out with my son. I'm an avid builder, so we always build projects at home.
All right.
I have been an inventor my entire life. So always, like I program, so right now I'm working on Python.
Cool.
Working
what
on.
What are you going to do with it? What? Just learn it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I've built, an electronic medical record system. I've built plenty of websites. Sweet. Yeah. I built one from scratch.
Sweet.
So I like to do that. I love to read. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is my favorite book. I have read that 6 times now and listened to the audiobook about 4. That's my favorite thing to do. My son and I love to read, and I love to do research and play on the PlayStation. So keep it simple. I don't watch TV. So
that's good. That's healthy.
And I don't do the social media thing, so if it's not something that's going to help me better myself, I'm not really interested in it.
That's a discipline we can all kind of grow from. That absolutely is. And in your world, you're constantly looking at the newest thing.
Correct.
So there's not a whole lot of TV time in that scenario if you're going to be effective at what you do. Exactly. So I absolutely appreciate that. I'm learning Python myself. That's why I ask.
Oh,
wow. And the idea is, when you're talking about AI and data analytics and how do you manage data, Python is a really easy way to wade into that data science kind of conversation because you can do so much with it.
Absolutely.
So maybe what we'll do, we'll have our next conversation around Python and how we've used it in our personal lives to kind of help each other out.
Yeah, definitely like in automation, so I would like to, build, how we have there's electronic locks. Like, I would like to
Yeah.
do my own electronic
Yep.
locks,
Yep.
and using Arduino, I've been playing around with that.
Yeah.
So it is definitely the tools that are going to be part of everyday life and the things that we use in the future, and also making our lives easier. I think that's
Yeah.
what's most important. And also, they are just um, fun things to pass the time, you know, and
And you're growing it. It kind of keeps that thinking process going. When you're
correct.
looking at it from, the analytical perspective, it forces you to think through things in a more linear fashion.
That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
So
definitely,
here's what I want to do next.
Mhm.
We probably talked to an average of 3 or so companies a week since March, and
Mhm.
there's some that have really been cool that we really liked. Others that we want to continue to work with to kind of
Mhm.
get them speed. Maybe what we can do is we can invite a couple of those companies online with us, and we just kind of have a roundtable discussion about what they do, how you work with them, and a couple of partners, just to kind of give a look into that process. Plus, it's probably good for those companies to get exposed to another market to kind of let people see what their technology is. As I think I mentioned, we visited with Penguin last week, Denosi, and we have a couple other companies planned in the coming weeks. But it's been a tremendous asset to have a partnership with you and the country of Israel. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I would be absolutely open for a roundtable. I think that would
Cool.
be a wonderful, wonderful event. And it would definitely bring a lot of exposure to these companies. And it would definitely be an opportunity to be able to have them, be able to, like I said, show, wonderful technology, but also themselves,
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely open whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Excellent. Devin Reeves, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a fun conversation, one of many. And for everyone who may not know, I'm Harold Strong, president of MIC, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. So with
Absolutely.
that, I will see you in the next MIC conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Harold. Talk to you soon.